Many of us think that there really isn't a lot of commitment to our democratic system, even in the little space we have for it, which is politics, because it's excluded from our economic system in the way I just said. But we do have it in the community, sort of. And so we're kind of disappointed that half the American people don't bother to vote. And half of those who do bother to vote seem to be more interested in details, like whether they can have a gun in the back of their truck, than in some of the larger issues that might affect them even more than the question of whether they can have a gun in the truck. Their attitude towards politics is one of not caring that much, not learning that much, maybe going in and voting, but who knows. We're kind of disappointed. Our democracy seems formal. Well, I got a thought for you. If you deny people 5 out of 7 days a week any real say in something that really shapes their daily life, which is the conditions of work, you're basically teaching them that they're not decision makers, that that's somebody else's job. You train every day, you understand all the decisions are left to people. You don't even know where they are. They sit in a boardroom 1,000 miles away. So why are you going to then get excited about politics, which looks to you more and more like the same thing? Somebody far away makes a decision. You're supposed to get excited once a year, go into a little booth, move a little lever. You're going to have some say now. You want politics to be real in the community, you have to make it real where people are, where their job depends, their income depends, most of their life is spent. Otherwise, you can't blame them for not being interested in politics when you really trained them into not participating, denied them a participating role. Here's another way it stunts human beings. We all have complicated and mixed capacities. In order to find out what you're really good at and what your contributions to society can be, you have to have a chance to see what you can do. And it doesn't even stay the same across your life. You have different capacities at different times. Why should some people have all the control, the design of what's going on, the direction decisions, and other people just do what they're told? If all you're doing is what you're told, you're not going to develop your capacity to innovate, your capacity to redesign a process, to redirect a process. Because you don't have any place to develop those skills. Imagine how much innovation we could have if we really gave everybody a chance to learn and how the system works and how the production of this, whatever you help to make, how that's done. If we gave you some training when you were growing up in the design, wow, we would all be different people because we wouldn't have divided the society into a tiny number of people who make all the decisions and therefore have to learn how to do that, and the rest of us who, no point in learning that, no point in teaching that to you, because you're never going to do that. You're just going to be a barista at Starbucks. And for that, the amount of direction skills you need are small. I don't mean to pick on Starbucks. I enjoy picking on Starbucks, but I don't mean to pick on Starbucks. Okay, what then is the solution? Well, you can see from the logic of what I've done that it isn't blaming the banker for doing what bankers do. And it isn't blaming workers for doing what they do. Workers are told to enjoy the American dream. They are paid, until the 1970s, they're paid more every decade. It's remarkable, the American wage system. 100 years before the 1970s, wages go up, and Americans could afford, with a rising wage, to have a higher standard of living, which is half the reason why millions of immigrants came from all over the world. In the 1970s, as I hope most of you know, real wages stopped rising in the United States and have never resumed. That was, of course, a crisis for the American worker who had promised to himself, to herself, to his and her children, the American dream. A home, a car, a vacation, a college education, all of it. What a torture to a population that has learned to believe that with every decade you'll make more money and that'll allow you to have these better things and to give them to your children, and you promise it and you believe in yourself as you're capable of doing it, and suddenly the wages don't go up anymore. And it's not explained to people that the wages didn't go up anymore. They're just left without the wherewithal to achieve the American dream. And if you don't make it a national conversation, and if you don't explain it to people why that happened, then Americans blame themselves individually. I didn't go to the right schools, I didn't take the right courses, I didn't major in the right thing, I didn't work hard enough, I didn't please my boss. Whatever, it's me. And they turn inward and blame themselves with all the social consequences of that. And when that doesn't solve the problem, they do something very understandable over the last 35 years. They want to hold on to that dream. And if the wages don't pay for it, borrowing will. And so the American people go on a borrowing binge, the likes of which no working class in the world has ever seen. They borrow everything. We had to invent the credit card for mass consumption starting in the 1970s. That's when MasterCard, Visa, all that got going. So everybody could borrow. We now have a new generation we never saw before. College students who come out of college with $100,000 or more in debt, only to discover that we have such a collapsed economic system that they either will not get a job or never get a job to ever get out of that debt. Nobody prepared them for this. And they're very upset. These are systemic problems. We're going to blame the college student for borrowing too much. We're going to blame that worker for trying to hold on to what every advertisement told him or her was the nature of a successful life. How cruel can you be? The system isn't organized very well, and it's producing lots of dysfunctional people. Everyone in this room, of course, except it, but out there. So what? What do you do if the system doesn't work? Well, you have to take a very big step. You have to ask yourself, what are the alternatives? Is there another system? And Americans have been taught for a long time not to go there, because that gets you into a dangerous area. But tonight, safe as we are in this place, we're going to go. I may surprise you as to where I think we ought to go. But I've given you a lot of hints along the way, and now you'll see. I think we ought to bring democracy to the workplace. To bring it where it has never been brought before. And here's how it would work. And this is not a complex idea. And it isn't a new idea. And I'm not the only one who thinks it or pushes for it. It's an old idea, as you'll see. But here's the idea. Let's organize our enterprises, big and small, in a new and different way. Let's democratize them. Let's arrange that all of the people who come to work together make the decisions. No more major shareholders, no more board of directors. The workers themselves become their own board of directors. Here's a sketch, just to have an idea in your mind. Monday to Thursday, you come to work, you do what you always did. Friday, you come to work, you don't do what you always did. Together with all the other workers, you have meetings all day on Friday. And together in those meetings, one worker, one vote, you decide what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits your work has produced. Another name for this that's old in American history and even older in other countries is called cooperative. Community enterprise. Lots of words. I really don't care what word you use, but I want to stress the democracy at work theme because we're a country that's kind of obsessed about democracy. So let's use that. Let's bring democracy to the place where most of us adults spend most of our time, most of our lives. Seems reasonable if you're committed to democracy to institute it where you are most of the time. Otherwise, what does your commitment amount to? Wow. Think about it. I'm now going to take you through some of the implications of doing this, because I want you to see potential where it is. So first, if the board of directors is the workers themselves, then one of the decisions they have to make, which is the decision made by board of directors now, is how much different people get paid. Aha! In capitalist countries like our own, the board of directors decides what to pay the top managers. And as I've already mentioned to you, over the last 30 years, they have been extraordinarily generous. So that top managers of major American corporations get salaries in the millions or tens of millions of dollars every year. That's normal. Well, if you're upset, as most Americans who pay attention to this are, that the gap between rich and poor has become more extreme, and that poses all kinds of dangerous social problems and tensions, then I have news for you. Perhaps the single biggest factor accounting for the growing divide in the United States are the immense salaries paid by corporations to their top executives. If the workers collectively decided what everybody got, what can you imagine might happen? Would the workers collectively give a tiny number of themselves huge salaries, and everybody else would have to scramble and wouldn't have enough? Would the majority of workers vote to hobble themselves in that way? Nah, not likely. Gosh, not at all. Not gonna happen. So if you're concerned, as many Americans are, to do something about the gap between rich and poor in the United States, here's a really powerful way to get at that. Make it a democratic decision. That would allow workers to pay some people more than others if they thought that's appropriate. But my guess is the ratio would be 3 or 4 or 5 to 1, not 300 or 400 to 1. And you know, we have a hint, an actual practical example to show this. Right now in the world, the single most successful enterprise that has converted to a democracy at work system exists in the north of Spain. Some of you may know about it. It's based in a little community, little city called Mondragon in the Basque region, just below the Pyrenees Mountains in the north of Spain. This is a company that has been growing since its founding in the mid-1950s. So it's a good half century old. It started with 6 workers. It's a system of cooperatives. It has grown quite effectively. It now has over 100,000 employees. It's the 7th largest enterprise in all of Spain. And it's just a set of cooperatives that coordinate with one another. In each of them, the workers are their own board of directors. And guess what? The workers made a rule. The highest paid person in the co-ops, in any of them, doesn't get more than 6.5 times what the lowest paid worker does. So there is no such enormous gap between rich and poor. And if you travel in the north of Spain, where this company is the largest company in that part of Spain, you will see that the cities and towns, I was there this summer, you can see right away. You don't have the slum over here and the fancy net. You don't have any of that. There are people with more and less, but the gap is completely different. It's a part of the world in which you could say something like the following and not be lying through your teeth. Everybody's in the middle class. They really did that. But if you want that, this is a way to get it. Here's a second thought. You think if the workers made the decisions collectively, they would decide to close the factory or the office where they're working and open one in China, thereby destroying their jobs, their incomes, and the community? I would guess not. Not big chance of that. You know what they would do instead? They would say, whatever problems our company has, like all companies, they have problems. One of the solutions that are not available is leaving. Okay, you can't do that. And by the way, there's nothing new about this. There used to be a time not so long ago here in the United States that companies said the only way we can survive, we have to be able to compete, is we need to be able to hire these 6-year-olds. It's called child labor. And if you don't let us do it, well then the British who allow it to be done, they'll do it, and the Spanish and the French, and we'll never be able to compete, and you must... And at a certain point, the American people looked at the conditions of 6-year-olds, and we had that working, and said, oh, we understand you have competitive problems, we understand you have the... But that you can't do. You can't have kids, and you can't do what you're doing to them. That's out. You have to find another one. Now, if that makes sense, why exactly didn't we say to them, you have problems, we understand, we'll try to help you. But one option you don't have is you can get up and leave. You can't tell your workers on Friday, don't come in on Monday, we're moving to Shanghai. Not available, you lose. Find another way. Get a better machine, reorganize your production process, produce something else. 50,000 things you can do to try to save your situation, but that you can't do. And you know why? Because it destroys people's lives and it destroys the community. Kind of what it does to the children, which is why we don't let you do that.